Greetings. Welcome to this next installment of Bible Topics That Make You Say, hmm. I'm Robin Sweet Ransom. And again, I have thought about something and I wondered, have you pondered it as well? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but that's okay because I've pondered it for you. All right, let's jump into this. This is going to be an interesting topic and maybe controversial to some. Does slavery have God's blessings? Does the Bible endorse slavery? What do you say? A lot of people may say no. It isn't something that God or the Bible endorses. Let's jump into it and consider some scriptures. Okay, it's not all about what I have to say. We're always going to go to the scriptures and this dialogue about it. So, does slavery have God's blessings? Let's look at Exodus chapter 21, verse 16. You may be surprised by this scripture. It says, anyone who kidnaps someone is to be put to death, whether the victim has been sold or is still in the kidnapper's possession. And this is can be definitely involved when it comes to slavery. And this is interesting. Anyone who kidnaps someone is to be put to death. Here in this country, the United States, there is no death penalty for kidnapping. Normally, the death penalty is associated with you taking someone's life, but God saw it as so serious that He feels like not feels, He says that you should be put to death, right? And some people try to justify things that maybe God has allowed that has been in the Bible and justify that as, that injustice as okay. And slavery being one of the things that they say that's okay because it is mentioned in the Bible. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6, verses 5 through 9. It says, slaves, can't stand that word, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear. What? It's in the Bible. And with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Obey them not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, but as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart. Serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord, not people, because you know that the Lord will reward each one for whatever good they do, whether they're a slave or free. And masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that He who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no favoritism with Him. And I've heard people say, well, in the Bible, when it speaks about slavery, it's not necessarily the traditional slavery we think of, like, for example, the slavery that was practiced in America for hundreds of years, right? The thought is that, if you work for someone, even though they're paying you, that can be seen as drudgery, some form of slavery, and they're your masters or what have you. So you could take it that route. But slavery, it did exist, and it could happen for different reasons. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 25, verses 44 through 46. It says, your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and members of their clans born in your country, and they will become your property. You can bequeath them or will them to your children as an inherited property and can make them slaves for life, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. So this is really a troubling scripture, right? It seems that God is telling you it's okay to engage in slavery. Just don't enslave your own, but you can enslave others. Really troubling. Maybe a lot of you didn't even know this was in the Bible, but it is. Is it something that has God's blessing? Oftentimes things that went on in the world, God allowed, but not necessarily saw that as something that we should do. And slavery, prior to the slavery that we have come to know of in the United States, was something where a person, was in debt. So then they sold themselves into slavery long enough to pay off that debt, and then they were set free. And it wasn't a situation where they were abused and raped and sold apart from their family. That evilness of slavery that we have come to know today, was not the type of slavery that was being referenced in the Bible. However, God did caution masters not to abuse their slaves and treat them well, so to speak. And one of the reasons why he tells the slaves to obey their masters is, they're the ones who's in charge of them, and to do that. And that scripture was really held over the enslaved here in America a lot. That's the closest they got to what they were taught in so-called church when they were enslaved was, hey, obey your masters because you'll get everlasting life later. So let's talk about it. Sometimes God permits what he does not condone. May not like it, but he may permit it for a time to serve his greater purpose. When humans chose to sin, they chose unbearable suffering, right? And free will can lead to the lack of freedom for others. God gave Adam and Eve free will, and what they did with it has led us to the hell that we're in today. As I said earlier, employment can sometimes be seen as drudgery or slavery. Nevertheless, God will hold an accounting on how we treat others, on how those in positions of authority treat those who report to them, as well as God will bless those who suffer and punish the abusers. So I firmly believe that those who have been in captivity, and I'm principally thinking about the slavery that existed in this country, I know that those who went through that are being tremendously blessed now, and that their tormentors, who consider themselves Christians, are being punished, right? And sometimes the suffering that we endure on earth opens the door for greater blessings on the other side. So, does slavery have God's blessings? I wouldn't say that he blesses it or condones it, but sometimes he has allowed it. And recognizing that it was in the Bible and he addressed it. So that's some food for thought, right? You probably didn't even think about that it could be something that could even be allowed and he be aware of and then set rules on how it should be managed. All right. That's something to think about. Let's talk more on the other side about America and this role in slavery and whether or not America has cursed itself as a result of it. All right. See you all on the other side. Have a great one and join us again on Scriptures that make you go, hmm.